So welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you are watching live or if you are listening or watching the podcast after, I'm so happy to have today here Cynthia von Schlichten. Just to give you guys a little bit of background, she's currently the general counsel for Farm Sanctuary and has been with the organization for over 3 years. In addition to having her Juris Doctor, she recently earned an LLM in animal law from Lewis and Clark Law School. For over 20 years, Cynthia has been a dedicated participant in this movement and remains impassioned about taking on the challenges ahead to make the world a better place for animals, particularly those animals who are exploited in agriculture. She has been vegan for 23 years and shares her home with her husband and 10 cats. So Cynthia, welcome on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, we're so glad you could be here. Well, I just wanted to start by asking you, what inspired your journey towards being an animal advocate?
Yeah, so I think my journey probably started like most people's. I grew up in a home that had a lot of companion animals, primarily cats. And to this day, I am, as you can tell by the 10, I am a cataholic, and my husband and I absolutely adore and cherish cats, and that is definitely still a thing. But that's how it started. My respect and love for animals began that way. And at some point along the way, and I don't really have a definitive moment, but at some point along the way, I made what I like to call the cat to cow connection, and just sort of starting to realize that the animal that essentially ended up on my plate was really not that different from the cat that I absolutely cherished and shared my life with. And that seemed like a serious disconnect. And not only that, but then the cat I cherished my life with, there were very same cats in laboratories being tortured so I could have lipstick, and that didn't seem right either. So I started to make that connection on my own, and I became vegan or vegetarian in 1996. And then over those next couple of years before I became vegan in 2000, I was just learning more and more about the animal agriculture industry and animal exploitation in general. And there's so much information out there once you open yourself up to that cat to cow connection, that I decided I just don't want to be part of this at all. Like, whenever it's possible, I want to avoid participating in animal exploitation. It's easier just to say, you know what, I'm not going to do it at all. So that's what I did in 2000. And it's also the reason I went to law school. I 100% went to law school because I wanted to be a legal voice for animals.
Awesome. Like Elwoods.
Right. I have a cat named Elwoods.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. I love that. Well, can you tell me a little bit about Farm Sanctuary, like what they do and how our community could get involved if they wanted?
Yeah. So I apologize in advance for rambling on about Farm Sanctuary because I'm about to. So Farm Sanctuary was co-founded by Gene Barr. He is our president in 1986. And it was really the first sanctuary of its kind. It was the first sanctuary that was rescuing farmed animals. And to this day, we still do, rescue is still a big part of who we are and what we do, obviously. And we rescue animals that come to live on our farm. And then we also help other sanctuaries and individuals and facilitate other rescues by traveling all over the country. Our team is incredible, rescuing animals or helping out or mentoring or whatever it needs to be done to further this mission of rescuing farmed animals. And I would say the staff on site is incredible. Like, nothing is overlooked, nothing is missed with regard to providing these animals the best possible care they can have and the best possible life. So that part is really, really great. And I will talk more about the sanctuary itself in a moment, but I want to also address Farm Sanctuary's mission overall. Our mission is to pursue bold solutions to end animal agriculture and foster just and compassionate vegan living. And we try to fight the disastrous effects of animal agriculture, not only for the animals, which obviously is pretty central to us, but also to the disastrous effects it has on the environment and social justice. Non-human animals are not the only victims in industrial animal agriculture. The people involved that are all tangled up in this industry one way or another are often also victims. And we definitely don't overlook that at Farm Sanctuary. That is also prioritized in our work. And also public health, of course. There's a whole health component to eating animals or not eating animals. And we hope to address all of these issues and fight them through our three mainstays, which is rescue, as we talked about, education, and advocacy. So from an advocacy perspective, we strive to create awareness about public issues. And public awareness around issues rather. And I personally think public awareness is really an underutilized tool in our movement. I think people like you and I, who are in this every day, sort of take for granted that people don't know what's going on. They really have no idea. I think most people are still envisioning the farm in Charlotte's Web, and that's supposed to be sad, right? But that's nothing, to what's really going on. And so I think public awareness is really, really important. We need to let people know what's happening. And if we don't let them know, no one's going to let them know, because the industry doesn't want them to know. And the media is often motivated by the industry, so they're not going to let you know most of the time. So it's really up to us to at least make people aware that these issues are out there, either provide them information directly or at least point to where they can go to find it. And it's not hard to find when you're open to learning about it. And so I think that's a really, really important component. And I think Farm Sanctuary does that well. We do help to create public awareness. And I think some people say that people don't care. Oh, people don't care. That's why nothing ever changes, or whatever they say. And I don't think that's true. And I think the perfect example is ballot initiatives. Almost every single time there has been a ballot initiative across the country that has an animal welfare component, people have voted for it. Almost every single time, which tells me that people do care. They just don't know, and they don't know what they can do to help. So I will talk more about what you can do to help, but just something to keep in mind. Public awareness is super important. Our advocacy team also does a lot of legislative and policy work to help try to create laws to improve welfare for animals. We have so few laws in place that protect animals used in farming, and our team really works with legislators and other nonprofits to try to change that. And we also engage in litigation efforts to hold factory farms and government entities like the USDA accountable for their treatment of animals used in farming. Not only is it an issue to get these companies to comply, but it's also an issue to get the government entity in charge of overseeing it to prioritize enforcement. So that's almost a bigger problem than getting the companies to comply. And going back to public awareness, Farm Sanctuary also uses humane education and promotes humane education among students, and has team members in place who actually go into schools and offer programs around humane education. And if something like that had existed when I was a kid, I think I would have made my cat to cow connection a lot sooner. So it's a really, really great tool to sort of create that public awareness at an early age. And it's always very age appropriate. So we're not like throwing horrible images at 5-year-olds or anything like that. It's very age appropriate, but still begins to teach them how to respect animals and their role, in life. So that's kind of what we do at Farm Sanctuary. And you said also, what can you do, right? So I'm going to talk about that a little bit. So one of the things I think people need to do in general is to get educated on the issues. So important. Even if someone's a meat eater, that is their choice at this point, but they should at least know what they're supporting and have a full understanding of it, and realize that it's not about Charlotte's Web. It's a whole world that people really have no idea. So I think getting educated is really important. And once you're educated and you're not satisfied with how things are being run, you need to be vocal and go out there and let the government know, let the companies that you have been supporting know that you're not okay with what they're doing. Because honestly, they're going to be driven by profitability and production. So if they think that what they're doing might affect their profit, then they might change what they're doing. So you want to really be vocal. And you can always go to Farm Sanctuary's site, and you can sign up to our newsletters. And we have calls to action coming out all the time to ask people to contact their legislator around certain issues or laws that are pending, all kinds of things like that. You can get very informed by just signing up on our website. And also with Farm Sanctuary, I would say come to the sanctuary if you're able. We have one in Watkins Glen, New York, which is about 5 hours from the city. And we have one in Acton, California, which is about 45 minutes from Los Angeles. And they are such amazing, uplifting, life-affirming places. First of all, they're immaculate. Second of all, you can really get the opportunity to see how animals live when they are just let to live. And it is a beautiful thing. And you can go on tours. with meet the animals. Our tour guides are great, and they have a lot of information, but the farms are beautiful. The Watkins Glen farm actually has little tiny houses and cabins you can stay in. But I've heard so many stories of people going to those farms and being meat eaters and coming out vegans, because it's just that much of a life-changing experience. So I definitely encourage people to do that.
That's beautiful. I love that. I would like to check that out myself. Okay, great. The next thing I wanted to ask was, what changes do you think are most critical right now, and how can we inspire people to move towards that?
Yeah, such a good question. I know I've been saying this a lot, but I think we need more public awareness around these issues for all the reasons I mentioned. I also think we need to work to create laws that are specifically intended to impose higher animal welfare standards. So many of the laws in America that we consider to be animal protection laws are actually not animal protection laws at all. They were created and are focused on promoting productivity, production, maybe public health. And if animals are benefiting from those laws, it's almost just like an accident, which is really, really sad. But I think specifically of like the 28-hour law, which is our transport law for farmed animals to slaughter, that law has nothing to do with animal welfare. It just happens to be that there are some animal welfare rules in place in that law. The Animal Welfare Act is another one that I think of. I could go on and on. That's really an issue I get upset about. But those laws they're not really helping animals, because that's not what they're driven by. And then the government entities that are in charge of overseeing them, like the USDA, their mission is not animal welfare. They have all these other missions. So of course, the welfare component is not going to be a priority. So we need to create more laws that actually say, here's an injustice happening to these non-human animals, and we need to fix that. And that's why we have this law, and that's the legislative intent, and that's the purpose moving forward. And then maybe animal welfare can get prioritized to a law. So I think that's really, really important. And again, I would just come back to the same things, like, let's get more educated about the issues. There's so much information out there. It's not that it's not out there. It's not on the news tonight. And, Hatfield is not going to volunteer information about how they raise their animals. You have to look for it, but it's out there. And, you can certainly reach out to Farm Sanctuary. We have a wealth of information. We're really, really responsive. But even aside from Farm Sanctuary, there's lots of great groups. There's lots of great information out there. Just educate yourself about what's really going on. And then if that displeases you, what's going on, be public, get out there, educate other people, let the government know you're not happy about it. Let the companies know you're not happy about it. And maybe you're not even going to buy their product anymore unless they make a change. I mean, that really hits them where they live. So I can't stress that enough. People need to just actively get involved. And it's a horrible, horrible industry and can be really hard to stomach. But, brace yourself and get out there, because it's going on whether you learn about it or not. So it's really important to educate yourself and then become an advocate against these practices. And then, like I said, come to the sanctuary, please come. It is so beautiful. Every time I go up there, every time I go up to Watkins Glen, because I live in New York, it's always such a wonderful, tranquil, life-affirming experience.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing a little bit about your journey, and also what Farm Sanctuary does. And if any of our listeners find themselves in California or New York, you should definitely go to those sanctuaries and bring your non-vegan friends.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Well, thank you everyone for listening, and thank you, Cynthia, so much. I hope you have a great rest of your day.